Lawmakers on alert after this week's shooting of House Majority Whip Steve Scalise and 3 others. Now some are calling to beef up security for all elected officials. Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa Francis in for Dagan McDowell, and this is Bulls and Bears. So the Bulls and Bears this week, Gary B. Smith, Jonas Max Ferris, John Layfield, along with Hadley Heath Manning and Chuck Rocha. Welcome to all of you. Hadley, let me start with you. What do you think about this? Boost security no matter the cost?
Well, of course, there's always going to be a cost-benefit analysis, but this week's events, first of all, our hearts and prayers go out to those members who are affected, also staff, people on Capitol Hill. I spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill yesterday, and you can tell that the mood there is a very somber, discouraged feeling, and naturally so. We do need to ask if, first of all, security measures for every member of Congress are adequate. Do they understand how to properly hold public events where security risk might be present? But we also, I believe it's also a good time to reflect on the tone of our political discourse, whether or not we are fostering the type of opinions of one another that are healthy. So this is something we can look in the mirror, but I think it's absolutely a good question, something we all ought to consider across the political aisle if security measures are adequate.
John, I mean, when you look at the situation, it's kind of this balance between trying to keep our lawmakers safe, but at the same time, they're supposed to be out with their constituents. They're supposed to be accessible. That's what democracy is all about. They talk about walking around a supermarket and having somebody come up to them and talk to them who they're representing as someone of the people. How do you balance that?
I think that's the tough part that you're facing right now. Look, it's not practical, unfortunately, to give all 535 members of Congress a security detail. This was a 6 a.m. batting practice. I mean, this is the last place you would expect something like this, that violent and that horrific to occur. So there is a problem, and Hadley's right about the tone in America. There are a couple other things you can do. Campaign finance. Right now, you're not able to take campaign finance and use that for your own security detail. I think that should be allowed for congressmen that are worried about that. I think congressmen that are serving the country should be allowed to carry a gun. I understand a lot of people out there will disagree with that. More guns is not the answer to gun violence, but something needs to be done because what we're doing right now is not working, and our country is not working right now. When you have businesses that are being boycotted either because you voted for or against the president, there's something wrong with our country when we can't get away from the fact that we disagree with somebody that's another American without condemning them. This vitriol has to stop. Civility has to come back to our country.
Yeah. Gary B., I mean, obviously there's two issues here. There's the idea of the security and the cost and all that, and when you hear the stories about how this happened and if there hadn't been those police there, the people in the field would have been just sitting ducks. It could have been much worse than it was, but it is also about the tone. What do you think?
Exactly, Melissa. It's about the tone, but it is about the cost. You're talking about 535 members of congressmen and senators. And then what we're talking, they're never going to be able to go to a baseball practice. They're never going to be able to walk to Capitol Hill. Is it around-the-clock security? The cost could be tremendous. I think there is a simpler answer, and I'm going to go back to something John said. Look, every one of these members of Congress and Senate travel with the staff. I think every person in Congress, maybe every person in Senate, should be issued a handgun. If not them, at least their staff. Trained how to use it, have it concealed, and then you effectively have a security force, not the police, they're not the FBI, I understand that, but as a deterrence to the kind of incident we saw in Alexandria. In fact, a number of congressmen have said if they were allowed to use their handguns, and some of them have concealed carry, they had a clear shot at this shooter with their own 9mm, except they weren't allowed to use it. I know a lot of people won't like that. I think in this day and age, it may be an answer.
Chuck, I don't know. It sounds a little bit extreme. You're going to issue a gun to, at least one person on every staff?
Well, it's very personal for me. I live on Capitol Hill. I spend a lot of times in these offices. I spend a lot of time out traveling with congressmen. I'm here in New York traveling with 3 Democratic senators. What we need to think about is when groups of senators and congressmen are together and none of them are in leadership, if there hadn't been one person, and there happened, thank God there was one person there from leadership at the baseball practice, so there was a security detail. So next weekend there's a junket where there's 14 Latino members of Congress. We're going to share ideas. We're going to be in one place. There's nobody there in leadership, so there'll be no security. I think that we can pay for security, and maybe not if there's just one person. I understand that. I think we should debate all the issues when it comes to just one junior member flying back home. But when the groups of congressmen get together and groups of senators get together, I think there's a lot more vulnerability, and some of these people who may be a little unhinged, it gives them opportunity that we don't want to let them have, and I think that's one thing we should look at when they're grouped together.
Jonas, is this the world that we live in right now, or is the temperature higher than it's been in recent memory? The rhetoric has gotten so out of control. We can only lead by example and try and tone it down. What do you think?
I don't want to fall into that. These are different times. You know, crazy people have been shooting at elected officials in this country for hundreds of years. The media used to be very radicalized 100 years. It was more than it is today. So I don't know if these are what does the guy who shot Lincoln, was he radicalized by the anti-government press? I mean, the bottom line is there's crazy people out there, and I think the real issue, they're mentally ill and they're not getting the attention they deserve. We could have a debate, I think, is off topic to go to, well, if more guns you defend. You know, at the end of the day, a crazy person with a rifle, everyone could have a handgun on the field. It's not going to make a difference if they're far away enough. So I think ultimately we have a society that lets mental ill just walk around, whether they're homeless or not, and somehow we don't address that until it becomes a problem. And I think that really is where the research gets spent. Otherwise, you're going to be militarizing all the softball fields in America. And if we're going to go that route, we got to make drones and robocops because it's not affordable with actual people.
Okay, but Hadley, I mean, in this case in particular, it really minimized the damage and the casualties when you had one person who was armed with several weapons, who was, I mean, if there hadn't been someone there, it would have made a huge difference. I mean, in this case, someone else having a gun, a good guy with a gun, made a big difference against a bad guy with a gun.
Absolutely. God bless the Capitol Police. But this is not an all-or-nothing question. You know, I don't think we need to move to a militarized state or put a constant buffer between constituents and lawmakers. But to Chuck's point, we can be strategic about this. This is what I mean by a cost-benefit analysis. Think about, are there new methods or new strategies that we can use to ensure safety and really foster an environment, to your point earlier, Melissa, where constituents and members of the public and lawmakers can all interact in an environment where they feel safe to express their points of view, but where violence is not going to be an issue.
Yeah. John?
Look, I agree, but when you're talking about a militarized state, like I'm not agreeing with going that far, but to Gary B's point, remember in 1900 we had no security around the president. It wasn't until 1901 and our 25th president, William McKinley, got assassinated that a year later the Secret Service started guarding the president. So sometimes you do have to adjust to the times. And talking about Jonas's point about the mentally ill out there, that there are a lot of people out there that are unstable. That's why the tone has to stop, because I can have a debate all I want with my friend Chuck Roach there. We're going to go have a Whataburger afterwards, and we're going to be fine. Yeah. But when people hear the vitriol that comes out of the politicians and pundits and all kinds of people talking because they are so upset about politics in this day and age, it affects some people that are mentally unstable. Yeah. That's why the tone is what's so important and has to change.
Chuck, real quick, last word.
I do campaigns for a living. Things have really changed over the last 7 to 10 years. Social media, an onslaught of information. I make political ads for a reason. I make political ads to actually get into people's face and talk about policies. This is not the way to solve our problems. You should be actively involved in your politics and holding your government accountable, but not by getting a gun or doing anything crazy. We have to tone it back.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.